Welcome back into another edition of the Fantasy Authority Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Steele. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyRat13. We're joined as always by Cody Cutter or hashtag HedgeLife. You can find him on Twitter at CCutterFF. That is Kutzer for the folks that don't know how to spell Cutter. And the man finally cut his wig. Right, he looks like a different person now. It's like, oh, okay, he's not homeless anymore.
Yeah, I feel like a brand new man. One thing that I was not thinking about as a side effect of this. So for those who don't know, I'm a mailman. I deliver mail. I have an all walking route, and past 2 days been the heat has been picking up here in PA. Today was like 92 was the high. And everywhere where my hair was previously that is not now is sunburnt. So like my forehead here is like raw. The back of my ears are like the hair and the locks were flowing and covering it are not there anymore. It's like the back of my ears, the back of my neck, and like my forehead is just like pink and raw and like sunburnt. Was not expecting that. So... But I'm going to persevere, man. I'm going to push through, even though I have, a little bit of sunburn on the face.
Well, it looks good. I'm sure your wife is happy too.
Yeah, man. She actually acknowledged that I'm in the house now, so that's nice that she's been at least saying hi to me every once in a while.
Let you come to bed and sleep in the same bed and everything now.
Yeah. Not sleeping next to the cat litter downstairs. So that's another plus.
That does sound like a real positive there. Anyways, so in this show, basically tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. Mainly, we're going to be kind of, with it's crazy, right? Because the first preseason game is 58 days away, and the first regular season game is 93 days away, I believe. So really close, right? Like, you would have told me, just thinking about it, like I felt like it was so far away. But then once you break it down like that, you realize how quickly it's getting here, which means we're less than 50 some days away from redraft season starting. So we're kind of getting there. June is the kind of unofficial start to the redraft season. That's when people can start talking about it and putting it out into the existence of things, where dynasty starts to go down, redraft starts to come up, and so that's why today we are going to be taking a look at some ADP, and we're going to be using some fantasy football calculators, PPR ADP, which is for the last 3 days. And I have to say, some of the things when I was looking at it really caught me off guard. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be kind of buying or selling before we would take a player at their current ADP, and we'll discuss through some of that. So again, as always, before we get started, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Really appreciate it. We got a lot of stuff coming out. You can also check out some of the other stuff that we've done, like Cody. He actually just recently released a top 10 rookie running backs for Dynasty, which you can also extrapolate that over to redraft as well. And if there's any other topics you'd like us to cover, keeper, Dynasty, redraft, roster construction, strategy base, let us know. You can also join our Slack chat, which was actually popping today in the Dynasty chat. A lot of good stuff going on in there. And, if you're listening to this on podcast, please consider rating and reviewing the show. It really helps us out. So, with all that being said, before we actually get started, we do have one important news and notes that came out, of course, because holdout season is finally here. Galvan Cook is planning on holding out until he gets a reasonable contract. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm never going to fault a player for trying to get as much money as they can, like especially at the running back position where it looks like those second contracts. I think we've talked about it before on the show too, where going forward, they're just going to be discarded to the side, right? They're just going to be crushed during their first contract, and then the second contract is going to come up, and they're not going to get that money. So I will never fault a player for trying to get as much money as they can while they're playing. But from what I've been reading and what I've been seeing, it seems like he's not going to be able to accrue this season to head into free agency after this if he doesn't show up. And it also seemed like the Vikings don't have a lot of cap space to give him the money that he's looking for. Like I think he wanted – it was north of what McCaffrey got, which was like 16 per year. Obviously, he's not going to get that, but if he wants anything close to it, I don't think the Vikings even have the cap space to be able to do that. So I don't know, man. And we saw how that worked with Melvin last year. Did not really turn out too well in his favor. I don't think he got the money that he was hoping to get. So I will never fault the player for doing it, but it kind of seems like he's not going to have too much leverage in this particular situation.
Yeah, he has like zero leverage, right? Because essentially, if he holds out the entire year, he does not become a free agent, but he becomes a restricted free agent next year. So, there is that. Like, he's not necessarily he's not a complete. It's not like the year doesn't count like it used to. But now in the new CBA, before you would start to get fined if you did not show up like you were supposed to. But most time, I would say about 99% of the times, teams always escaped, never actually went through with it, didn't actually fine him. New CBA, that's gone. They have no. That's not an option anymore for them not to hold it back on you, right? So if he were to sit out the entire year, I think it ended up being like he would end up losing like over 1.5 million, something like that, which is more than what he's going to make this year. So he essentially would be paying the league to actually not play, and then he would also be a restricted free agent. Which now at that point, teams could bid for his services, and then he could end up getting his contract. So maybe it is somewhat of a possibility if he's okay with losing that kind of money. But he doesn't have a ton of leverage here at all. And I get it. There's people that have said, well, he is the team. They've built this entire offense kind of around being a run first offense. But for me, I'm not saying Alexander Mattison is as good as Dalvin Cook, but I don't think it's a significant fall off between the two of them if he does not play, and Alexander Mattison and Mike Boone fill that role. So I don't think it's a great move for Dalvin Cook. And, he may not be the only one though, right? Like we started talking about kind of Joe Mixon, because Joe Mixon's in the same situation as he is. Alvin Kamara's in the same situation that he is. So, I mean, this may be the tip of the iceberg here. I know we're only in June, but what does this do for Dalvin Cook's fantasy? I mean, because we saw it last year, right, with Melvin Gordon, whenever he was going to sit out, and he fell dramatically in draft. And I think that if this continues to roll through until we get into August, like, this is going to really significantly hurt his ADP, along with some of these other guys. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. I mean, if this is continuing into August and we're still hearing that they're super far apart, he has no plans of showing up, I think people are going to start to get worried, like they did. Because didn't someone by the name of Kevin Steele take Melvin Gordon early in the Scott Fish Bowl last year?
There was a guy with that name, and he did. He actually also took Todd Gurley because, I tried to be contrarian. He fell a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take Todd Gurley, and I took the L on that as well.
Yeah, so I think what's going to end up happening is, with that recency bias in mind, people are going to hold off on them. I think we see Madison's redraft ADP really skyrocket. I think as of right now, he's going as like an RB40, RB44, or something like that. So he's going to jump way up. I think right now, if for whatever reason, if you're redrafting super early, I'm not going to let him drop too far. You know what I mean? Like I can't do that right now because of all of the things. Like, it seems like he doesn't have that leverage, right? So I'm not going to let him drop too far if you have like an early draft for whatever reason. But if you do yours late, like the, fourth week of the preseason or something, and you're still not hearing anything, then yeah, he's definitely going to drop probably two rounds. I would assume, maybe into the third.
Probably more than that, because I think at that point he probably does pull a Melvin Gordon, and he's already pot committed at that point. And I think you could see him hold out at least all the way through until he has to report. I think it's like week 8 or week 9, just like Melvin Gordon did last year, and then show up. Which, if that happened, I mean, he should be going in like the 8th or 9th round at that point, because you're only getting him for the half of the season.
Right.
So it's going to be an interesting time to monitor this, because I do think there's a possibility Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon hasn't had the career success that Dalvin Cook has, but the thing with Dalvin Cook as well, he's never stayed healthy. He's never played 16 games in his entire career. So I think it's like last year was definitely like he showed us exactly what we thought he could be. But at the same time, I do think that it should be taken into consideration the fact that he's just never been healthy, even in college. So, those things certainly hurt him. But like I said, at the end of the day, we still have a long time to go, and we'll have to monitor how this thing goes, because this could all be water under the bridge. Maybe they get a deal done. We'll see. But as of right now, I think you have to drop him down in your rankings. And in best ball, you're in a best ball situation right now. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable taking him. Now, if he starts to fall to a significant level, something we saw with like Zeke, a couple of years ago whenever he did this. And then where people really hit kind of a home run because he fell and people didn't know how long he was going to hold out. And I think he missed, did he miss a week? I think he missed a week, right? Because he signed like right before the season started or right there at that point. But his draft value had fallen, and then people were actually ready to get him at a little bit of a value. And I think that could end up happening here at Galvan Cook, just depending on how things go. He seems pretty serious about it. We'll see what happens.
At what point, if say you're in one of those late drafts, how early would you take Madison in this scenario? Like, I mean, it's a week or two out. They still seem super far apart. At what point are you going to pull the trigger on Madison?
If we get to close to the end of August and we have no sign of him showing up, then I think you probably consider taking Madison in the 5th or 6th round, something in that range, right? You still understand that he's only going to have half a season of at best, probably a half season of value. However, that half season, those 8 weeks can end up carrying you, at least into the playoffs at that point if he ends up returning the value, as well as I still think he has somewhat of a role, even in the event that when he comes back. Like, I think he is somebody that has some standalone value because I do think he's somebody that's probably going to see touches every single week as well.
Yeah, and then the injury history with Dalvin as well, so that makes sense to me.
So, anyways, all right. So let's go ahead and get this thing started here with the old, do some ADP pressure. Again, you can check this out over at Fantasy Football Calculator using their ADP, their PPR ADP. Their half-point PPR has not been updated. But their PPR has been updated. So that's what we're using. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to start at the running back position here. And we're going to start with my boy, who we just talked about last week as somebody that I felt as a breakout candidate. But I'm not going to lie to you. I did not see this kind of ADP for Kenyan Drake. I thought he was going to be somebody that we could get in like the mid-second, maybe early, late second, maybe early third. But right now, he's going at the 109 right now. Are you buying or selling that?
In the words of Randy Jackson, that's a no from me, dog. I can't do that. RB5. I'm sorry, man. Like, it felt because, dude, there's a lot of smart people that are smarter than me. That Silva and guys like that who are all about Kenyan Drake this year, and I'm sure that's why he's sitting at RB5 at this point. But dude, I can't do it. Like, this is not a guy that a lot of people were super excited about going into this. Now all of a sudden he had, I think it was like 3 good games with Arizona. Now all of a sudden we're all in and we're all buying it. Like, I get going from the death trap of Miami with Adam Gase to this offense are completely different. You can't really compare the two. But if you look at what he did, like he had some like the games where he played really well, they were really good. So he had 3 games with over 100 yards rushing. I think they were all over like 120. I think he had like 160 in there at one point. But then he had 5 games where he didn't even eclipse 70 rushing yards. He wasn't utilizing the passing, or let me say that he was not too efficient with what he was getting. He had like 2 games of 7 targets, but those didn't amount to anything. He only had 1 game with more than 30 receiving yards. So at this, like RB5 at 109, I can't do that. I know that you're all about him. You brought up the Slack earlier. We threw a poll up in there. Who you wanted. There was Mixon, Sanders, Drake, Jacobs. Was there one more in there? I think maybe.
Derrick Henry.
Okay. So, Kev, you put that in there. Zach Marmer, a former TFA OG, threw his vote down on Drake. Both of you guys said you loved him, but are you buying at this point?
I think he's his show notes actually a little bit. He's actually going on RB7, so it's not as crazy, but still. So right now he's basically essentially going, McCaffrey, Barkley, Kamara, Dalvin Cook, which is probably going to change a little bit with the news we just got. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs are all going ahead of him. Going after him is Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb. And Ezekiel Elliott's going ahead of him as well. And then Miles Sanders, right? And so you look at that and you say, okay, well, who would you take? When I get to that point, if I'm wanting to go running back at that point, I would consider Josh. I definitely have a consideration for Joe Mixon, and then I would take Miles Sanders ahead of him. Which I would take Miles Sanders over Kenyan Drake. But it's hard to deny Kenyan Drake in the situation he's going to be in there. There's nobody else around him, right? I mean, it's Chase Edmonds and Eno Benjamin. And I mean, when he arrived there, he finishes the RB4 from week 9 on. He's in a better offense. Another year with Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray takes a step forward this year. Opens up we like running backs, especially with running quarterbacks, because it opens up lanes for the running backs. I think he's going to see targets. And I think adding DeAndre Hopkins also helps as well and just kind of makes this offense go. So with everything considered and how good this offense probably should be, we know it's going to be a high volume pass offense. He should have opportunities to score. It's going to be hard for him to really fail. And so if you look at the running backs going around him, it's tough to really make an argument against them because of everything that I just said. And then again, you go look at the running backs after him. Joe Mixon, I don't know what that offense is going to be. Does Joe Mixon struggle? Joe Mixon has not. I mean, he hasn't officially broken out. I definitely think I love Joe Mixon as well. And then you have, I mentioned Nick Chubb, who's going after him. And then Miles Sanders, who has some question marks in his own right. They keep talking about bringing another running back, but again, we've talked about that. Doesn't really matter to me, but I would take Miles Sanders ahead of him. But that's kind of the list for me in terms of running backs. And so for me, he has a really clear-cut role here in this offense, and it could end up commanding 70, 80% of opportunity share.
I don't know, dude. There's just something about it that I just can't buy in at that price. Like I can't just go from him being an afterthought to RB5 within the span of 30 seconds. I don't know, man. That's one I would rather have Devontae. Obviously, we're talking running backs right now, but going after him, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, give me all of those guys over Kenyan Drake easily. Like I said, man, there's just something about it. Maybe I need to pull up the old NFL Game Pass and watch him. Maybe I'll get a little bit more appreciation for it. But as of right now, RB5 at 109, I can't.
It is. It's pretty spicy. Like I said, it was real spicy when I saw it. Maybe it drops a little bit. We are in June. That gets talked down a little bit. Some other guys move up ahead of him, and he ends up going in that mid-second round. Because I would feel great about taking him in mid-second. Taking him at 109 is really spicy there. The other thing I will say as we're on the running backs are flying off the board.
It's crazy.
Wide receivers is being significantly pushed down. Like when you talk about Allen Robinson, for example, as a wide receiver I love, you can get him in mid to late third round. He's almost going into the fourth round. Allen Robinson is, and he might be going to the top of the third. But regardless, he's going in the third round. Which to me, I figured he was going the second round. A lot of these guys are just being pushed down because running backs are being drafted so heavily. I think there's some edge. Now, I do not believe going zero RB. I think zero RB is pretty much done. I think it's kind of a dead thing, but I do think that you can go robust wide receiver and take a running back in the first couple of rounds and just slam wide receiver because value is so crazy that you could end up taking, I don't know, Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill with your first 2 picks and then coming back around in the third round and still getting a Leonard Fournette, who we'll talk about, or David Johnson, grabbing a couple of these other guys and loading up with some other places, but continuing to slam wide receiver because wide receivers are just being undervalued right now. I think a little bit too much. I think we've gotten a little bit too overboard, and this might be a nice time to pivot.
Yeah, man, I agree. And I'm sure we'll definitely get more into the strategy stuff once we get closer to the season. The next guy we have up on the list, a guy that's near and dear to your heart. I want to get your thoughts on this. Clyde Edwards-Helaire going at 209 as RB14. Kev, what are you doing with him at that point? Are you buying or selling?
This is a tough one, really, to be honest with you, at where he's currently going, 208. I think he ends up going higher than that by the time the season gets here. I think he continues to get talked up. He's going at about RB14, and I think we could end up seeing him going as an RB1, a late back-end RB1. I have reservations with this because we look at this team last year, and what do you think? I get that Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a talent is better than anything they had last year with LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams. Far and away, he's much better talent. However, I don't know if the opportunity is going to be there. And that is the issue that I have with him and him going that high. It's so tough because I can see a scenario where he's not getting that. Damian Williams is still going to have a role. I want people to understand that. Like he's still going. It's not going to be a ton, but if you go back and you just look at the opportunity share for this team last year, so basically last year that there was 89 total receptions for the running backs, 106 targets, 311 total rushing attempts, 89 receptions, 106 total targets. Damian Williams averaged 10 carries per game and 3.2 targets per game. LaShawn McCoy averaged 7 carries per game and 2.4 targets per game, right? None of the other running backs really come into the fold here because none of them, Damian Williams, Darrell Williams, Darwin Thompson never really had much of a role. So that's out the window, right? So if you look at that, do you think that the Chiefs are going to start throwing the ball less? And now you could go back to when Kareem Hunt was there, and I understand that argument as well. You look at how even Kareem Hunt's rookie year, or not Kareem Hunt's, Patrick Mahomes' rookie year, where first year he played, Kareem Hunt was really productive, right? However, they didn't have the weapons that they have now. Yeah, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce was there, right? They have Sammy Watkins, who's still there, which he was there as well, I believe, too. But they have Sammy Watkins. McCole Hardman's there. Like, they have all these weapons. Not everybody's going to be able to touch the ball a ton, right? And I think they threw the ball. They were number one in passing compared to the run-pass ratio last year. They were number one in that. Unless you're expecting that to go down and they're going to start running the ball more, I don't think the attempts are going to be there. And like I've said, like there's so many options in the passing game. Like, I don't think that he's not going to get. And I love Rhaegar to death. Dude is a beast. Follow him on Twitter. Check out his Destination Devi. But he's someone that has mentioned that he thought he could have 100 receptions or 100 targets, or it was either 100 targets, 100 receptions. Regardless, I don't think he gets anywhere close to that. I don't see how they're going to get anywhere close to that unless they suffer significant injury, which is possible. But if that doesn't happen, I don't see how that comes to light. And if that doesn't come to light, unless he is super efficient and he gets a ton of touchdowns, which is possible with this offense. I love this offense. You know, that it's one of the best, if not the best still in the league. They bring everything. And here's something else to remember too. When we talk about, we'll talk about Cam Akers lately, but there's a bit of a narrative here, right? With Cam Akers, it's how bad that offensive line is, and that's why he's not going to be able to produce, right? If you go back to 2018 Rams, that offense is one of the best in the league. Now, last year it took a step backward. But when we look at that offensive line last year, it was terrible. But nobody talks about the Chiefs' offensive line. The Chiefs' offensive line was just as bad as the Rams was last year. If you look at their offensive line last year, they ranked 28th in adjusted line yards and 21st in power. Those are things that should be taken into consideration. Their offensive line is not good by any means. Patrick Mahomes is a madman and runs out and does all this and makes plays happen, right? But their offensive line's not better. They did nothing to improve their offensive line. They did have some injuries last year, which should be taken into consideration as well. So for me, I'm a sell that. Unless we get more as the season gets closer, and we find out that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be the workhorse and everything in this offense, I could probably get on board with that. But right now, I can't do it. And I mean, we haven't heard anything different either. That the fact that David Williams is going to be the starter.
Yeah, man. Totally agree. I was interested to get your take on it, obviously, because you are a Kansas City faithful. But at that point, I completely agree. I don't think he just pushes Damian Williams out of the picture. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a split than what people want to think. And an RB14, that's like a price where you're kind of taking it into consideration, but like you're not taking it too seriously. Obviously, if we get word that it's gonna be the Clyde show and it's just gonna be him, then this ADP is just gonna rise, right? But as of right now, like I said, it's like, well, Damian's there, but is he really? I don't know. But so for me, I don't have too much more else to add. I think you hit on all the important points, and I'm also gonna pass on that. Like I said, until we get more information, 209 RB14, that's just a little rich for me. There's a guy who's going after him who more or less should have the entire backfield to himself. I think his target is going to come down a little bit, obviously compared to last year. But Leonard Fournette, RB16 going at 301. That is going to be a situation where I'm going to buy that. For dynasty purposes, I kind of want to get out this year. I would rather get out a year too early than a year too late. So unless you're a contender, I would be selling Fournette if you can. But for redraft purposes for 2020, I'm going to be buying this. You're not going to get too many other running backs after this point that are going to have the carry upside that he does. Like I already mentioned, he's not going to get 100 targets, but everyone keeps talking about, they brought in Chris Thompson. Gruden worked with him at Washington. Can we just put that to the side as if like Chris Thompson is like a beacon of health and he's going to come in there and just be ready to go for all 16 games? I think Fournette's targets were going to come down no matter what, but I don't look at Chris Thompson as being like the reason why. If he can stay healthy, I think he can be a nice PPR upside pick like much later in your draft. But I'm not looking at Chris Thompson as like some huge threat to Leonard Fournette. Even if he splits some of the carries, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. If his targets come back down to like that 50 range, I think is fine. I think his rookie season, I think he had around like 35 catches, something like that, and I think he finished as an RB1. If not, it was right on the fringe. So I think that's well within his range of outcomes again for this year. So RB16, I think you're getting a little bit of value. But what are you thinking on Fournette, Kev?
I don't really understand it, to be honest with you, his ADP. For somebody that, commanded 90% of the opportunity share last year. He was 9th in fantasy points per game, 6th in rushing yards, 5th in receptions. The 3 total touchdowns, despite the fact that, which should be mentioned, he only had 3 total touchdowns last year, but he still finished 9th in fantasy points per game, 4th in red zone touches, 4th in targets. And they weren't even a team that ran the ball a ton. They were 23rd in attempts per game, but he was 8th in yards created. There's a lot to like here with him, right? And I know people are all of a sudden looking at Chris Thompson, and all of a sudden it's like Chris Thompson is like Tariq Cohen or some. He continues to get hurt. Over the last 2 years, if you look at it, he's had a couple here and there games that you can kind of get excited about. I get it. If you look at Chris Thompson, he does have familiarity with the offense with Jay Gruden there. Last year, he had 58 targets and then 42 receptions, which was 16th in the league. He was hurt. He missed some opportunities there. And then if you go back to 2018, I think the first 2 weeks of the year, he scored 20 fantasy points, and then it sort of fell off, right? I do think Chris Thompson is going to be involved. I think Chris Thompson is going to receive pass-catching work. But that's kind of baked in there for you at RB16, right? They're going to feed him the ball. There's nobody else there. There's Raquel Armstead, as a late round or a handcuff that I like later in drafts. But there's a lot to like here with Leonard Fournette, and getting him at RB16 in the 3rd round. Like I said, if you're one of those people who starts wide receiver early, if you could get, like I said, Devontae Adams and like Tyreek Hill with your first 2 picks, and then going like Leonard Fournette in the 3rd round, like I would feel pretty solid about that, right? And I think all the opportunities are going to be there. I still think he commands that backfield. I still think that he is somewhere in the range. He's not getting 100 targets this year. I don't see that happening. I think he probably falls more into the 60, 70 target range. Probably gets around 40 receptions, something like that, which will hurt him a little bit for sure. But overall, like I think Leonard Fournette should be ranked high, or should be going higher than he is. And if he continues to go around this range, like I'll have no problems, slamming the draft button, in upcoming drafts here in a couple of months.
Yeah, like I said, especially with the guys who are going after them, you're not going to find too many that are going to have the touch upside that Fournette has. So he's someone, if he stays in that range, because it seems like everyone's just thinking he's going to have like this massive drop off, which actually leads pretty nicely to our next guy, which is another one that I'm not fully understanding here either. But Chris Carson at RB21 going around later at 401. Kev, why don't you take this one first? Are you buying or selling at that price for Chris Carson?
This is a tough one for me, but I think I'm buying at RB21, right? You're kind of baking out all of that. Rashad Penny's still there. They drafted DJ Dallas. Now, we're going to have to wait and see, because there's been some rumors that Marshawn Lynch might actually come back. If that happens, that will change how I feel about Carson, because I think that I think Carson could move into more of a pass-catching role than he is an every down back. But if you look at it in 15 games last year, he commanded 71% of the opportunities, 15.5 fantasy points per game. they were obviously, you know, a run heavy offense. They ran the third most. They ran the third most in the league. He ended up with 278 carries, 46 targets, 43 red zone touches, which was 13th. And then he was fourth in yards created. He was also 4.7 breakaway run rate, which was good. He also was third in the league with 6 100-yard games, which was tied with Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, and Josh Jacobs. And then he was his 3.63 yards after contact were also 15th in the league. So there's lots to like with Chris Carson last year, right? Chris Carson has always been undervalued. It happens every year. We look at Chris Carson, and you know, it was when Rashad Penny was going to get picked. Everybody hated Chris Carson. Chris Carson was dead. And, well, as we found out, that really, I don't know what the hell the Seahawks were doing with ever drafting him in the first round. That turned out to not, you know, work out because Rashad Penny has been nothing, right? We saw a little glimpse of him last year. We got a little excited with him. We thought maybe there was an opportunity there with him, and then that ended up falling off. So for me, barring anything crazy happening, like I said, like Marshawn Lynch being brought back, I think it's an obvious buy at RB21. I don't get it. Like, he was 12th in fantasy points per game last year, right? Like, I don't know what there's not to like in a run heavy offense. He's likely going to command a similar workload. He's going to get targets. So there's a lot to like here. And at RB21, I mean, he's almost going as an RB3. So I'm all about it.
Yeah, man. To me, I think it's still going to be his backfield. I think there is a little bit of a hesitation as far as like if he starts.
I was going to say, it just hit me. They also signed, you know, like I see the thing. Yeah, I mentioned that Carlos Hyde was also signed as well. So I think that should be mentioned as well.
Yeah. And to me, that's more of a, if Chris Carson's fumbling issues continue, there's someone there to nip at his heels, right? Like, I don't necessarily see Hyde pushing him for the starting job at the outset of the season, unless, like you said, something crazy happens. Let's say like Chris Carson is just like looks like shit for whatever reason, or those fumbling issues pop up. That is a situation where I can see somebody like Carlos Hyde coming in and taking some of those touches and kind of taking over that role. But I think at the outset, and at that price, with everybody chasing running backs like we've talked about, I think you can buy there without that like really throwing off your draft, right? If you take, I wouldn't want to take Chris Carson as my RB1 by any means, but if he's your RB2 and then that doesn't work out and you can snag someone later in your draft, like I'd be fine with that. Not as my RB1, but as my RB2, and I think you can make up for that later in the draft.
Do you feel like almost that they're going to have to move on from somebody here? Because like it feels like they have weights. I mean, right now they have Carson, they have Penny, they have Carlos Hyde, they drafted DJ Dallas. Like, it feels like there's a lot of mouths here, and like I can't imagine they're going to keep all of these running backs.
Yeah, somebody's definitely going to get cut or something, right? Like I can't with all the guys you mentioned, I can't imagine there's going to be too much of a trade market for them, especially with Penny not being able to stay healthy. Hyde has been bouncing around the league for how long now? Dallas, they obviously just signed, so unless one of those guys like really shows out in the preseason or something, and they can move on for them, that's the only scenario I see. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see if somebody like Travis Homer is cut. You know what I mean? A couple of those other guys, but that's kind of where I'm sitting right now with that situation.
Yeah. So all right. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's jump over to Cam Akers, right? Our second rookie, I should say. He's currently going at 508 RB27. Are you buying or selling him?
I'm going to live my best hedge life right now, and I'm going to
go or.
Hey, will you go out with me? Yes or no? I'm going to circle or and send it back. I'm going to buy at RB27, but I think I'm going to sell at 508. Is that allowed on the rules? Am I allowed to split that, live that hedge life?
I don't know how that exactly works, but
like 508 just seems like as we sit right now, just seems like a little early. But I'm seeing him finish ahead of 27. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm sitting with that. I think in a normal year where everyone's not so starved and crazed for running backs, like RB27, you're not going to have to take RB27 at 508. But if I'm going to commit, I'm going to commit to buying, because I do think that Akers takes over this running back room sooner rather than later. I don't care about Sean McVay and what everyone's pointing to in that article with him saying, like, we're going to use the committee. You don't move up in the third round last year to take Henderson if you think he's going to be the guy, and then take Akers in the second round the following year. If they felt that comfortable with Henderson and Brown, they're not going to take that second round capital with that team is not in a great spot with the defense, with the O-line. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to waste that second round capital on Akers if they felt comfortable with Henderson and Brown. So I do think he takes over that room sooner rather than later. I'm not seeing like a Christian McCaffrey level usage with him. I still think those other guys are going to be involved, but I do think Akers sees the lion's share of those touches. So I will buy here.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, because saying like fifth round seems a little rich, but then you're like RB27 though, and I get that, but I think it would depend on roster construction for me, because I do think there's a couple of running backs that maybe I'd have a little bit more interest in a little bit later than him. But at the same time, I do think he has that sort of upside that you're looking for. I do think the Rams offense is going to kind of bounce back from what, it's going to be much more similar, in my opinion, to the 2018 Rams than the 2019 Rams in terms of their offense. So for that, like, I definitely think Cam Akers is the best running back they have on that team. I definitely believe that. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of narrative out there. People are pumping their narratives on Twitter, which are just ridiculous. And people try to back up their narratives with any little thing they can find. They're grabbing at straws as much as they possibly can. But I think Cam Akers is the best running back on this team. I think Darrell Henderson maybe is more of just that RB2. And I think Cam Akers, he has that upside, that league-winning potential, that RB1 upside there. And so I have no problem with him, with taking him at RB27. Mid-fifth is a little rich for me, I will say that. But in a situation where these running backs are flying off the board for everybody, like, right, you're going to have to kind of, you're going to have to make this decision. But like I said, Cam Akers at RB27 isn't ridiculous. I know that Jonathan Taylor, I think, is going around ahead of him. I do think I 100% expect Jonathan Taylor to continue to move up rather quickly and aggressively up there. And I think he ends up going more in that second, third round range as well with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah. People are going to be pushing Mac off to the side and going after Taylor. But we have a question here from Open 24 Hours on the YouTube. For only 2020 redraft, how would you rank Akers, Dobbins, Mostert, Hunt, and Keyshawn Vaughn?
That's tough. I would probably go Akers.
Yes. Man, I think I'm putting, the one I'm not really sure what to do with is Raheem. That's one where little sneak peek. We're going to be talking about our rankings here coming up, and that he's someone who I had trouble with ranking. I'm really not sure what to do with Mostert, because it seems like everyone's just trying to give him that running back room to himself, and I don't think that's going to be the case. But even with his, I think he's going to be able to be efficient with the touches that he gets. Yeah,
I think I would go Akers, Hunt, or no, I'd go Haker. I don't agree with that either. I would go Akers, Hunt, Vaughn, Dobbins, and then Mostert, I think. I don't know. That's so tough because, I agree. I think with Mostert, I don't think he gets to the. I think we are undervaluing Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman now is going as an RB 40 something or somewhere in that range in terms of ADP. I still think he has a role in that offense, and I think we've seen it a lot last year where they were more than okay with a committee, and now Jerick McKinnon's back, right? The rising from the ashes like a phoenix. We might actually get to see Jerick McKinnon.
For the
sound like they're going to cut him.
For the fifth. Yeah.
And the tough thing with Dobbins, which I was actually thinking about putting him on this list as well to talk about, but is I don't know how I love J.K. Dobbins, right? And the kind of the narrative with him right now is just wait till 2021, right? Because that's what we're all waiting for with him. Because in Dynasty, he is it's no doubt that that J.K. Dobbins probably deserves to be in the top 3 conversation, the top 3, top 4 for sure. But for this year, he's like Mark Ingram's still there. Mark Ingram's still going to get opportunities, so it's a tough one.
I'm going to go Akers, Vaughn, Mostert, Dobbins, and then Hunt. But ask me tomorrow, I'm probably going to change my. That's one where I could go back and forth on this one all night.
Yeah, this is something this is one of those we're going to have to get more information. We need to kind of see how things play out a little bit, get some training camp information, see how things turn around in preseason and stuff like that. So, I'm almost certain my opinion would be a little bit different come August. And then that is the best name ever.
Yes, you're gonna have to
Thundercut Smith. How do you feel about drafting wide receiver, tight end, and then all rookie backs? One, I don't think you need to take tight end that early, right? I think it ends up hurting you. So I would much rather take a tight end later. I get the opportunity, or not the opportunity share, but the positional scarcity of wanting to take a tight end there. But something we've kind of talked a lot about so far this year, that this tight end, tight ends feel like it's a little bit deeper this year than what it normally is, right? Even though I was looking at like Dallas Goedert right now is going at like tight end 16, right? And he has like legit tight end 1 upside, even with Zach Ertz there. And so I would not go tight end unless it's a tight end premium or something like that. I wouldn't do it. Now, like I mentioned, going wide receiver is certainly, I think, not a bad strategy, because you're going to get fantastic value early. Wide receivers are falling. Now, there's also the flip side, that how deep wide receiver position is. But if I can get the opportunity to get like Devontae Adams, who could easily be a wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver 1 this year, and then Tyreek Hill right there with them, like 2 top 5 wide receivers. And then, like I said, then that's when I would probably start hammering running back. Now, I don't think it's a terrible idea to go rookie running backs either, because I think there's enough in this class where this could rival what we saw a few years ago with the Christian McCaffrey class, right? Where that class really blew up. And I think that this class could end up being somewhere in the same range. But it's all ultimately going to end up, for me, going to depend on how much further, because there's a big difference between talking about it in June, because like I said, Jonathan Taylor's certainly going to move up higher. I think DeAndre Swift's going to move up higher. I think we see Cam Akers could possibly move up a little higher depending on how things play out. So I'm not trying to hedge. I'm just saying, for me, if I was going to go wide receiver, then I would want to hammer running backs for the next couple of rounds.
Yeah, for sure. Just with the way that everything's falling, I know if I started wide receiver, tight end, I would hate my team, because with how early and often these running backs are flying off. I don't mind going tight end in the 3rd, but if I were doing that, I'd want to go RB, and then slam receiver after that, because you're going to be able to get guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th round who are going to be the wide receiver 1s on their team. So that's how I would do that, or at least go RB wide receiver. I would want one of those first 2 picks to be running back, just because of I know, just me personally, I know I would not feel comfortable with those options at running back, like especially rookie running backs, because this year for 2020, all of them have at least a speed bump in front of them to leading their room in touches, right? So that's where I would fall with that one.
Yeah, and speaking of the last running back that we have to talk about is Keyshawn Vaughn, right? He is currently going at RB 31, 702, and then Ronald Jones is going RB 36 and 801. There is quite the power struggle going on right now between the Ronald Jones, Keyshawn Vaughn debate, right? And it's really starting to get to a point where more and more people are jumping on the Ronald Jones bandwagon, and people are really hyping up Ronald Jones. Now, objectively, and trying to not let my bias come out with how much I love Keyshawn Vaughn, like Ronald Jones was better than what he last year, and certainly what he was his rookie year, right? But I still believe that Ronald Jones is just a guy. And I think there's a reason they went out and brought in Keyshawn Vaughn. And I think that he is certainly much more involved in the passing game. I do not think that he's not James White. I've seen that. He's not James White. Like that, he is not that good of a receiving back. He is certainly
Is that a
more than
real thing?
capable. Okay, but he's not that. And I've also seen the Keyshawn Vaughn is too small to be a lead back, but he's almost 220 pounds. Like that is ridiculous. Like whoever says that clearly is not paying attention to anything. For me, if things were as they currently are, I would really have no problem taking probably either one because I think the upside's kind of baked into it, right? Because if you take him, in the 7th round, Keyshawn Vaughn at RB31, if he's your 4th or 5th running back, like I don't hate that because I think he certainly is going to have an opportunity. And I think he's going to have an opportunity early. I think at the very least he starts out getting that pass catching work. And then with Ronald Jones, again, same thing. Like, but right now, I am buying Keyshawn Vaughn and selling Ronald.
Yep, I'd agree. I don't think we really have to go too much further into this one. This is where anytime Ronald Jones comes up, I'm going to have the same response. He couldn't beat out Peyton Barber. That's all you need to know. And they let that dude walk. So
Yeah,
that's it.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead. Then to keep this moving, let's go ahead and jump over to the wide receiver position where we've had this debate before, right? With over the offseason, right around free agency time, after the trade happened, we had a big show with a lot of people on, and we really had a really heated discussion about this. But DeAndre Hopkins is going at wide receiver 3, 110 overall, right? First round. I'm selling DeAndre Hopkins at 110, wide receiver 3. I do not think that his target share is going to be what it was last year. Right, last year he commanded 30.9 target share in 2019. He had 150 targets. He was 8th in total target distance and 10th in air yards, 2nd in weighted opportunity rating, and 2nd in market share of air yards. Now, looking at the Cardinals, right? So last year the Cardinals were 9th in pass attempts per game. I think there is certainly room to grow there, and that they could end up actually being higher than that because I do think this offense takes another step forward. However, Christian Kirk is still there, who played 13 games, had 108 targets, had 24.9% of the targets. Larry Fitzgerald had 109 targets, 20% target share. Now, obviously, I do think that that Larry Fitzgerald probably drops a little bit. I will agree there. That's probably 100% going to happen. I don't think he disappears. I think people think that like all of a sudden he's just going to completely fall off this cliff. I think it's going to happen. I still think he's going to get his. But my biggest concern with him is I think they're going to go play much, much more into a 4 wide receiver set, which I think is going to then spread the ball out a lot more because that's what the Cliff Kingsbury offense wants. So for me, I think wide receiver 3 is just too high for him. I think that I would much rather have some of the wide receivers that are going after him. And so for me, that is why I'm a sell on DeAndre Hopkins. Because if you look at the Houston Texans offense, he was the man. It was Will Fuller, who was always hurt, and then nobody, right? That is not, you cannot say that now with this offense. Not that I'm not saying, because I think Christian Kirk is really a much better value than what he should be. I think he's going much later than he should be. I think he should be valued as a wide. I think he has wide receiver 2 upside, and I would much rather take that than DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I think at wide receiver 3, you're buying him at his ceiling. I'm outside of some crazy touchdown variants. I really don't see a path where he can finish as wide receiver 1. There are some guys like you said who are going after him who I'd feel more comfortable projecting them into that role, like Tyreek Hill, like a Julio Jones. I mean, he's even going. According to this, what I just pulled up, he's going ahead of Adams right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So it's updated now. If you from yesterday to today, he's actually moved up. So now he's at 109, wide receiver 2, and that's way too much.
Yeah, you're buying him at his highest possible outcome. Like obviously, a wide receiver 2, there's not going to be too much room to go up from there. But like I think that is like at the height of his range of outcomes, and I think there's obviously a much better shot that he finishes I still think he has wide receiver 1 year. I'm not too worried about them spreading out the ball because if you look at how things have been trending over the past couple of years with more, wide receiver 2s for an NFL team getting involved in the passing game, like we're not seeing a lot of guys coming out with 170, 180, 190 targets. If you look last year, I think there was only 5 receivers who had more than 150 targets. Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, A-Rob, Edelman, and then D-Hop had 150 on the nose. So I don't think that's a prerequisite how it used to be in years past. I still think you can obviously produce wide receiver one seasons with getting that 140-ish range. But like I said, you're buying him at his utmost ceiling, and you're not giving him too much room to move around there. And there are a couple of those guys I'd rather have behind him.
Yeah, I agree. So I just a sell for me. So let's go ahead and move on to the next guy, and we're gonna go to Odell Beckham, right? And Odell Beckham has turned into more of a name in recent years than fantasy producer. If you look at him last year, he had 133 targets, was 74 receptions, just barely eclipsed 1,000 yards with 1,034, 4 touchdowns, 12.6 fantasy points per game, which was 33rd. However, there is some reason for some optimism here because he was 3rd in air yards. He was tied for 4th in weighted opportunity rating. So those are all things and 3rd in total target distance. However, I can't help but to feel like a lot of this you could pin on some Baker Mayfield, because Baker Mayfield, so he was 6.45 target accuracy, which was 88th in the league among wide receivers. So every target he got, he was 88th in the league in that. And then Baker Mayfield was inaccurate with a 69.5 adjusted completion percentage, which was 36th in the league. Right. So I feel like that if Baker can take a step forward this year and kind of bounce back and be the guy that we thought he can be, I think with the new offense, with Stefanski here, I think, where they do more play action and everything else, I think Odell can actually be a pretty significant bounce back candidate here. And he's going at wide receiver 10 at 307. So mid 3rd round. And if you start running back, like getting Odell Beckham, which, years past is normally going in the 1st round, early 2nd. Get him at 307 is a pretty decent value. And so I definitely think that there is room for growth here with Odell. And this Browns offense as a whole, where we kind of everybody got way too excited about them too early last year, and they kind of fell on their face. Well, that whole situation was a disaster. I think Baker takes a big step forward this year, and I think Odell Beckham does as well. So I like Odell Beckham. I am buying Odell Beckham in the 3rd round.
Yep, I'm going to buy as well. Not too much more to add here. Just the fact of it can't get much worse than what it was last year, right? So even if there was just like a slight uptick, and that has to be like one of the quietest 1,000-yard receiving seasons in recent memory, especially coming from somebody like Odell. I think it's just like you said, it's the name, and we just expect so much more. Obviously, the touchdowns weren't there. He had the lowest catch percentage that he's had in his entire career, and that's with playing with the GOAT Eli Manning. So I think if there's just like a slight uptick in efficiency, if Baker can take that next step forward, I think he pays off this wide receiver 10 price. And so I used coach speak to throw it out the window. Now I'm going to use it here because it fits my narrative. But Stefanski, one of the first things he said during one of his press conferences was they want to get him more involved. So I'm going to use that here, and I'm going to push that away on the Cam Akers talk from earlier, because that's how we do things.
Yeah, no, that's how all fantasy football works, right? You use stuff to support your narrative, and then also to, so I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know, but like I said, I think we both agree on Odell. Now, let's go and jump over to JuJu Smith-Schuster, which is also interesting because, again, he's more of, I think, of a guy who last year everybody was super excited about, was going as a top 10 wide receiver for most people. People were slamming the draft button for JuJu. Now it's kind of like people have soured on him a little bit. Now, he's still going in the early 4th round, 403, wide receiver 15. I think you could probably see him go in that wide receiver 15 to 20 range for some people. And I think, for me, I'm buying that. I think this offense, now that the tough part here really is the fact is, can Big Ben stay healthy, right? We've been seeing Big Ben get out there on the field and practicing. He's been practicing all offseason so far. And there's been reports out there he's been working with his wide receivers. But this is this is kind of a big year for JuJu, right? Because I believe he's heading into a contract year.
Yep.
Contract years are undefeated. There's the rumors out there that the Steelers have no interest in bringing him back. which seems ridiculous to me because if there was somebody that you wanted to build your franchise around as like a brand and everything else, it's JuJu Smith-Schuster. Like, he is the nicest dude out there. Just seems like a really good person. And so, like, not wanting to build your brand around that, I don't know. But regardless of that, I think JuJu does bounce back this year. And so for me, I think you end up like I would love that start again if you took 2 running backs. Then if you want to go wide receiver, like I said, go Odell here and then maybe JuJu in the next round. Like, I think that's a really great start. I think this is a nice bounce back year for them. The only concern I have is, can Big Ben stay healthy? Right? I don't know why. That I feel like that they would have been a great landing spot maybe for an Andy Dalton type, somebody like that as a really strong backup there in Pittsburgh. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I was out last year on how highly he was going and all the buzz he was getting. I mean, I think he was a back of the first pick. I know in dynasty circles there were some people that had him as high as the wide receiver 1 for dynasty. I can never get on board with that. But at this point, at wide receiver 15 at 403, I can definitely get on board with this because if you look at the guys who are going after him, I'll just throw out some names: DJ Moore, AJ Brown, Robert Woods, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf finish out the top 20. Nobody has the target upside that JuJu has, like you said, if Ben can stay healthy. Because if you look behind JuJu, I know you're a big Deontay guy. I'm a little lower on him, but like then it's James Washington. I don't know, man. There's that entire wide receiver room is just a whole bunch of question marks, which makes your point even stronger about like if you're gonna sign somebody and pay them, that's the guy you want to sign because if they don't have him next year, it's gonna be super ugly. Like I said, nobody else going after him has that high target upside. I mean, I think you can be looking at him as 160, 170 for JuJu just because of everything else around him. So I will be buying there as well.
Yeah. So, all right. So we both agree there. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And let's jump over to DJ Chark, right? And again, these next 2 guys that we're going to talk about, I'm a little surprised with around how far they're going, how low they're going now. So DJ Chark is going at wide receiver 26 at 5'10". He is the number 1 wide receiver in that offense. And I think there's a lot to like here with DJ Chark, especially like I said, at wide receiver 26, he's going as a wide receiver 3. And so for me, I mean, if you look at just what he was able to do last year, he was 19th in fantasy points per game. This was his second year in the league. I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere as well. Like nobody was expecting this from him with what he was able to do last year. 73 receptions, 1,008 yards, 8 total touchdowns, which was 8th in the league. 25 deep targets, which was 14th in the league. 117 targets. Like there's a lot to like here. He committed almost 22% of the targets in this offense. Jacksonville was forced to throw a lot. Like I don't think their defense is going to be any better than it was last year. I think this is a team that's going to have to throw the ball a ton. And so with all that being said, like I really like DJ Chark as being probably the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. They did add Laviska Shenault, through the draft. D.D. Westbrook is still there, but for me, like I think he is somebody that should be considered, a wide receiver 2. I think I have him as a wide receiver 20 right now, so I have him well above his ADP, and so I don't know. I'm a clear buy on this one.
Yep, we're going to be on the same page with this one as well. Like you said, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 on that team. I'm really interested to see how they use Laviska Shenault, but I don't think that having another target like that is going to really take away too much from him. And I think the reason why he's kind of slipped a little bit compared to how he performed last year was he kind of tailed off toward the end of the year, right? He came out the gate hot. Look at his fantasy points from last year on a weekly basis. Look at 24, 18, 17, 8, blew up with 36. And then after that, it kind of tails off a little bit. He has a 19-point game in there and a 30-point game. But outside of that, like there was not a lot going on. So I think that's why you're seeing him slip. And if you're looking at some of the guys who are going after that, and this is why I like drafting based on tiers rather than just like a straight rankings list or, looking at ADP if you're going to do it that way. There aren't too many other receivers going after him where you can look and say for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that he is the team's wide receiver one. I mean, you're looking at Terry McLaurin. I guess you could throw him out there. Marquise Brown, but like that's not going to be a high volume offense. Like I said, after that, it's just like you're not looking at anyone else who you're looking at and saying like, okay, this guy is going to be the one. So at this point, man, I think he's a clear buy as well.
All right, so let's go to Tyler Boyd. Why don't you tell us where? I already know what you're going to say, but tell the folks wide receiver 35 at 801 seems a bit ridiculous.
Rodney Dangerfield up in here, he can't get no respect. It doesn't make any sense to me either. The dude finished as, I think, in half PPR anyway. He was like wide receiver 21 last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think the year before that he was wide receiver 16. And if you look at his situation last year, like awful, completely dreadful. That entire offense, the quarterback situation, there was nothing going in his favor, and he still finished really well last year. He still had a strong finish. And outside of him, like AJ Green, like who knows what's going to come of him? Who knows if he's going to be able to stay healthy? Auden Tate, obviously T Higgins coming in. They spend a high draft capital on him, but I'm not looking at any of them as guys that are going to be really, really pushing him. I think he's the clear one in that offense as well. And I like the wide receiver 35 just does not make any sense to me whatsoever. I don't know if you can make any sense of that, but I certainly can.
The only thing I can think of with him is I think people look at the addition of T Higgins and then AJ Green coming back and being healthy, and then John Ross as well, who started off strong last year. So maybe people feel like that he's not going to command 25% of the targets, which is what he got last year. He was actually 7th in the league in targets with 147, but he was 27th in the league with fantasy points per game at 13.9. But as you mentioned, their quarterback play was atrocious. They were tanking last year, so they decided to sit the Red Rocket. And so for the most of the year last year, I mean, his quarterback room was absolutely horrific. And so there was nobody else. He was the main target there in that offense for most of the season because no AJ Green and everything else. The quarterback play was so horrific. Now with Joe Burrow coming in, I do think that obviously is a big upgrade for them. So for me, that is a definite buy for me. You shouldn't be overvaluing AJ Green, right? Like I don't know what AJ Green has left in the tank, and I don't even know what motivation he has left. To be honest with you, he clearly did not want to come back. They franchise tagged him, which I thought was the most ridiculous thing ever. Let the guy go and try to get a championship, one time in his career before it's time for him to hang it up. But I can't understand some of the narrative for people that maybe that this is a really crowded situation. Like I said, AJ Green. But for me, I think it's pretty clear. Like I still think that he's probably still the guy who commands most of the target share. I think that he certainly will be in the slot, which is a very valuable targets there. I think at best you probably see AJ Green on the outside and then T Higgins on the other side with Tyler Boyd in the slot and with a rookie quarterback with no tight end, right? I mean, who do they have at tight end there as well? So I think that's also a positive for him. So all the risk is gone with him at wide receiver 35. That's just a little bit ridiculous to me. I think that he's somebody that again has wide receiver 2 upside, and you're getting him almost at a wide receiver 4 value. So I'm all about Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, I mean that one's been one that's been sticking out to me this entire offseason. I really don't understand why he's going as late as he is, especially considering his track record over the past 2 years. Like I said, last year that situation couldn't have been any worse for that entire offense, and he still finished with 90, over 1,000 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. So he's a clear buy for me, and I think he's being treated somewhat similarly in Dynasty as well. So he's someone that I'm going to be targeting on Dynasty teams as well as my redraft for 2020.
All right, so the last part of this, so when I was looking through all the ADP, I noticed that most of these wide receivers are going basically within 2 or 3 rounds of each other, the rookie wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
So more often than not, I typically do not like to take rookie wide receivers in redraft because they are so volatile. However, I do think that this year is going to be a little bit different, and I think there's a couple of them that I really want. So, which rookie wide receiver or wide receivers are you buying in 2020 in redraft? You have Jerry Judy going 809 at wide receiver 40, Henry Ruggs going 907 at wide receiver 42, CeeDee Lamb 912, wide receiver 43, Justin Jefferson. This surprised me actually a little bit. 1009 at wide receiver 47. This one also surprised me. Jaylen Rhaegar going 1103, wide receiver 49. And then Michael Pittman going very close to him at 1110, wide receiver 51. If you had to pick two out of that group that you really wanted, who would it be?
Number one, the easy number one here is Jaylen Rhaegar. Like that one to me, like out of this group, he has, I think, the clearest path to targets. And also, he's out of this group, he's going to have the most targets, and he's also going to be the wide receiver 1 on his team. Obviously, with Rhaegar, the thing you have to worry about, I guess, is the involvement of the tight ends there. But you don't go out and get somebody like Jaylen Rhaegar and just give him 60 targets in a season. So he, like, that one to me just does not make any sense. Like, easily give me Rhaegar at that price over anybody else, over Judy, over Lamb, all those guys. The second one I'll pick, man, I think I'm gonna. This one's tough for the second one because, like I said, I think it's so clearly Rhaegar over everybody else. The second one, give me Judy. I think it's going to be that 1A, 1B situation in Denver. I think there's going to be enough targets to go between those two. And with how much of a technician he is, man, I don't think that he's going to, and how good he is after the catch, I don't think he's someone that we need to see him get 140 targets. I think he can get you, 110 and still give you like a back end wide receiver 2 season on those kind of targets. So Rhaegar easily the one here, no questions asked. And then I'll take Judy at 2.
Yeah, so for me, I think number 1 is Justin Jefferson for me, which should be a surprise to you. But I love Justin Jefferson. I think he's in a fantastic situation in Minnesota. We know that they were moved on from Stephon Diggs, so he immediately steps in as the wide receiver 2 in that offense. I think he's the most polished wide receiver, at least ready, NFL-ready wide receiver. I think whether they play him in the slot, whether they play him on the outside, I think he can do both. I think the targets are going to be there for him. With him going as late, I was surprised 10th round. I suspect as we get training camp going, and we start to learn a little bit more, I do think that Jefferson probably starts to rise, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually the first wide receiver taken in redraft. Now that's where it's going to get tricky for me, because if he were to start going in like the 6th, 7th round, I probably would be out on that just because I think that's a little bit too much volatility there for a rookie wide receiver. I would never really want to take a rookie wide receiver that early, unless it was just a clear cut. Now with Jaylen Rhaegar, I love Jaylen Rhaegar as well. We know this. This is a Jaylen Rhaegar friendly podcast. The thing that does worry me with him is more so that I do think there are certainly more mouths there, and I don't like using that cliche of the more mouths to feed, but that's really what it is, because you have Zach Ertz, you have Dallas Goedert. They're going to run a ton of 12 personnel. Deshaun Jackson is still there, and he is certainly going to get his deep targets. Alshon Jeffrey, we have to see what's going to happen. We've heard different things with them. Either he's going to start the year on the pup. Not that I think that these guys that are better than him, I 100% believe Jaylen Rhaegar is better than they are, but those guys are going to get targets. And if Alshon Jeffrey is able to be healthy by the time the season starts, he's certainly going to get opportunities. And so is Deshaun Jackson. So is Zach Ertz. So it becomes much more of a situation where I don't know if it is, in terms of target wise, I don't know if it's going to be that clear cut for Jaylen Rhaegar. So I love Jaylen Rhaegar. And if he continues to go where he's going in the 11th round, all about it. Give me that. I'll take it. I will take him there. But if he were to be a guy that starts rising much more than that, unless a lot of things change, that's where I would be have a problem with taking Jaylen Rhaegar that high. So for me, I think my number 2 would probably be Jerry Judy. I agree with all the stuff you said. I think it's a very similar situation to what that Justin Jefferson is in Denver. That it's basically Cortland Sutton, and then you have Noah Fant, and that's kind of it, right? Bayshawn Hamilton's still there, but hasn't really ever done anything to break out. So right now, I mean, he's kind of that obvious choice is the number 2 target there. And I think this is being in the AFC West, they're going to have to throw the ball. I think all of these offenses kind of got better outside of maybe outside of the Chargers because of the Tyrod Taylor situation. But overall, I think all these offenses in this division are going to push you. They're going to have to throw the ball more, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball as much as they want to. So with that being said, I think things kind of line up for Jerry Judy. I do want to ask you, because now we've kind of got this far out of it, what is your thoughts on Henry Ruggs? Is it still the same as what it was before? Because I can see some upside with him, with him. And if you go look on our YouTube channel, like it's been one of our like kind of our video that's just kind of like taken off, and a lot of people have watched. And like I see the upside there, right? Because he has the wheels. I think he is strong at contested catches. You see it at Alabama, but there's so many red flags with him. And my other issue with Henry Ruggs still is the fact that I don't know if Derek Carr, if you look at his deep ball completion percentage numbers, like his accuracy was fantastic. However, the actual attempts and volume was just not there. And so that for me is a red flag. Now you could make the argument that who was their deep threat that they really had, right? And so maybe that is something that we're kind of overlooking with Derek Carr, and that's what we feel like. So I think there's a lot of upside there for for Henry Ruggs, and could end up being honestly the second or third highest scoring rookie wide receiver for 2020 because of the opportunities that are there. Because literally, if you really want to talk about opportunity, he probably has the clearest path to targets, right? Because it's Darren Waller and then Tyrell Williams, right? I mean, who else do they have?
How dare you, sir? Are you forgetting about Bryan Edwards?
And no, I did not forget about Bryan Edwards.
How dare you?
But I'm talking about players that are already established that are there.
Yeah, Bryan Edwards. For Ruggs, they're mainly the same. I would want him in a best ball league. I don't know if I want to deal with that headache with a regular redraft league. I don't think that he is only a deep threat. But the thing with him is you don't want to hamstring or hamper somebody's potential with fantasy with a quarterback like Derek Carr, who's not going to be pushing the ball down the field as often as you would like. I think he can do more, but I don't want to rely on, all right, man, hopefully he hits that 90-yard slant for a touchdown this game. Like that's not what I want to rely on. I think that's going to be what he's used on the most is, crosses, slants, things like that. But with somebody with speed like Ruggs, I want him to be paired with a quarterback who's going to be willing to take those shots downfield. And Carr might do that every once in a while, but he's not going to do it often enough where you're going to be like, all right, if he can just connect on one of these 4 shots, like I don't think he's going to be getting 4 deep targets per game by any means. So like I said, I think he is more than just a deep threat. But with someone with his speed, you do not want to hamstring him with a quarterback like Derek Carr.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if they get really creative with him and scheme him into space and allow him to use his agility and what he's able to do once he gets the ball in his hands, like a la what the Chiefs kind of did with Tyreek Hill his rookie year, then maybe there's something to be had there. But again, I kind of agree with you. But if he continues to go 9th, 10th round, like some of that's already baked out of it. In terms of that, but it's going to be really hard, probably, I would assume, on most weeks to be able to figure out when you're going to play him. I would rather take a shot if I wanted to take some rookie wide receivers, not named Justin Jefferson or Jerry Judy. I would probably rather take a shot at like a Michael Pittman who's going later than him and a Denzel Mims that's going later than him. Yeah. That are both guys that I think also have relative opportunity to have an opportunity this year. And then also Bryan Edwards, because this is a Bryan Edwards podcast. Bryan Edwards is a beast. And I think, again, I still think there's an opportunity there that he could end up being the best wide receiver the Raiders drafted this
year. Yeah, even somebody like an Ayuk, from the standpoint of I would trust Shanahan to scheme Ayuk more than I would Gruden to scheme Ruggs.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, all right. Well, I think that's all we have on our list. And I think that's pretty much what we got for tonight. You got any other closing comments?
No, just that if you're listening to this on podcast form, please be sure to check out our YouTube channel. We were talking a bit before, peel back the curtains a little bit before we started to record, that's where we're going to be putting a lot of our focus. Obviously, you guys are still going to be getting the podcast, but we're going to start putting out a lot more video content. So if you're listening to this in podcast form, it would mean a lot to us if you went over to the YouTube channel and subscribe to make sure you're keeping up on everything we're going to be putting out. I'm going to do another ranking. We're going to have some more of the Devi episodes coming out. So if you're into Dynasty and just want to get of the guys who are going to be coming out, definitely check that out. And then we're going to be doing some player profiles and things like that as well. So excited for all that stuff that's going to be coming out.
And your cat is
Dude,
your cat is giving us the seal of approval.
Fucking hate it.
And also, if you guys want, if you're checking this out, whether it's on podcast, whether it's through YouTube, head over to Slack. We got a free Slack channel. It's absolutely free. A lot of people charge you for that. It's part of their Patreon or it's a part of their premium service. It's absolutely free. We can talk about fantasy football all day. I know with everything that's going on in the world, a lot of craziness, that sometimes it's nice just to escape from that and to be able to just talk about football or talk about anything. We have DFS, we have Dynasty, we have Redraft, Best Ball. We pretty much have every channel for everything. I think there's even a gaming channel that I don't know if anybody uses. But other than that, we're all always there. We all love to talk football. There's a lot of people in there. There's a lot of people on Twitter that are in there, that are some other analysts that are in there. So it's absolutely free. It's in the show notes, whether you're watching this through YouTube, whether you're watching or listening to this on the podcast, it's always in there. Just click the link, automatically join, and get you in there. It's absolutely free, like I said. So it doesn't cost you anything. If you don't like it, all right. So with that being said, I really appreciate everybody checking out the show. Next week, we're going to be going into, I believe it's going to be our quarterback rankings. We're going to be talking about our top 12 quarterbacks. So excited to get into that. Like I said, we're finally here. We're finally in redraft season. It's absolutely here. In a couple of months, people will be drafting. Even actually less than that, about a month and a half from now, people are really going to start drafting. So, again, I really appreciate everybody checking out the show. And with that, you can follow me on Twitter at FantasyRat13. You can follow Cody at CKutzerFF. And until next week, peace.